Sup y'all, it's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today I figured I'd talk to you guys about class homogenization and ability pruning in Legion. I've had a lot of people send me messages in mail asking for me to go over this subject, so hopefully I do talk about everything you guys want me to cover in this video. Now I think that the reason why people wanted to have this discussion though is because whenever the Legion Alpha came out and people finally got a chance to see their favorite class or spec in action, and they're looking on the screen trying to find all the kind of crazy cool new abilities that they're going to have in the new expansion, and while there are some, there's also a whole lot of empty squares. And those empty squares, guys, that was kind of a circle, but you guys get what I'm saying. Those empty squares are where abilities used to be. And Blizzard has made it no secret that they've been trying to de-homogenize classes. And one of the big ways that they've been doing the de-homogenization is removing spells and abilities from different classes that don't necessarily fit with the their idea, Blizzard's idea of that spec or class's class or spec identity, or really I think they've been using the term a lot, spec fantasy or class fantasy. Right, and so like I guess like the class fantasy of a warrior, at least to me, is like Conan the Barbarian, or you know, like Maximus from Gladiator or something like that. And they don't necessarily want to have warriors going around dotting things, and you know, like with mages, it's got to be a little bit different than warlocks and everything like that. Now, I think this can be a positive and a negative thing. And guys, I mean, like, let's be real, okay? Nobody wants to lose functionality. Nobody wants to lose utility from their class, but I do think that it can be positive and good for the game in the long run, because it's not like just you're losing utility, everybody's losing utility. So it becomes more of a, you know, like each class can bring a certain thing to the table that other classes can't bring, and I think that's actually going to help rating out a lot in certain ways. It can also hurt it if it's done too much. And so I'm going to kind of like use a comparison here. I think that the high point of class homogenization was at the end of Mists of Pandaria. Everybody had an execute, everybody had an on-demand heal, everybody had a damage reduction, everybody had a CC break, everybody had you know, just basically everything, okay? And honestly, guys, like at that point, like the biggest difference between classes was the transmog, okay? So I don't really consider that a good thing, but I also don't really consider it a good thing either. The way we had it back in Burning Crusade, if you guys didn't play back then, each different spec, down to the spec, each different spec and class had a very, very unique thing that they would bring to the raid, and you needed to have basically one of everything in order to really fully maximize your raid's potential. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing either. I guess, like, full disclosure, I guess like the way where I think the best middle ground was drawn was in Wrath of the Lich King, where some classes were obviously better than other classes at doing certain things, but everybody could kind of do something well. But there were, you know, each class had their own thing that they could do best. I think I just like, kind of to give you guys an example, I'll use like tanks in Wrath of the Lich King. Death Knight tanks were extremely powerful at tanking magic damage. Sartharian 3 Drakes, just the absolute fucking best. Paladin tanks were amazing at tanking very large amounts of mobs. They always have been, and taking relatively minimal damage with that, and also tanking mobs that did very unpredictable damage because they had something called Argent Defender that procced automatically, and it would heal them, so they kind of had a death save, and back in Wrath of the Lich King, that was extremely valuable. Prot Warriors were very good at tanking singular mobs that dealt physical damage because of the way Shield Barrier and Shield Block worked and everything like that. They were very, very strong with that, and I think that Guardian Druids were good at I don't remember. Probably nothing. But anyway, I just, you know, whatever. Anyway, you know, obviously each tank was good at everything, or was okay at everything, but each tank had a very specific, you know, niche that whenever they were actually put in that situation where Warrior was having to tank Saffron, or like a Malagos or something like that, or a Death Knight was able to tank Sartharian 3 Drakes, a Paladin was able to tank I don't even remember like an AoE fight, but you know, a Paladin was obviously really, really good at AoE tanking. Now, obviously all of the different classes could do that, but each of those classes was the best at it, if you guys can kind of probably get what I'm saying by now. I think that's the best way of handling it, and instead of making each class, you need to have each class, or you know, that you doesn't matter if you have one class or another. Because one of the drawbacks, and you know, bring the player, not the class, you know, mentality and philosophy that Blizzard has used with Mists of Pandaria, and in a lesser extent 100% Wards of Draenor has made it to where Arms Warriors now have to be competitive with Arcane Mages, that also have to be competitive with Elemental Shamans, that have to also be competitive with Rogues, and every class has to be competitive with every class on DPS, because, you know, if you're not necessarily bringing high damage, you can just bring in another class, and you're not necessarily going to lose a lot of utility by doing so. And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing either, because, you know, like, it's really kind of hard to balance all of these different specs and classes and making them do, like, within maybe, like, let's say 5% damage of each other, and, you know, still for it to be kind of a unique and fun game. So I think that different classes that are able to bring in a specific utility that kind of earns them their raid spot just by that, by the nature of that utility, is in some ways a good thing, but also a bad thing. You know, it's a very, very good thing if you're able to have that utility, and I think that whenever you need more than one of something, it can be kind of a problem. An example of that is, what's that fight that I hate? Mythic Manaroth. Mythic Manaroth, you need to have 2 Death Knights in order to rotate Gorfiend's Grasp. Gorfiend's Grasp is a ability that it grips all of the different mobs on top of one little target, and you were able to grip all of the imps together to where you could stun them and AoE them down very, very easily. Now, is it possible to kill Mythic Manaroth without Gorfiend's Grasp? Yes, it is, but you're going to be having a very, very bad time. And, you know, obviously having Death Knights for that, having Death Knights for Zul'Horak, and Gorfiend's Grasp has been, throughout this entire real expansion, been extremely, extremely powerful ability, and it made it to where even if a Death Knight sucks, if they can press that button, they're in the raid. And at some point that's kind of a good thing, like maybe if you only need 1 Gorfiend's Grasp, but whenever now you need like 2 for Zul'Horak and Manaroth to deal with every single wave of imps and everything, it does kind of, again, like kind of go over the line to where it was in Burning Crusade. So anyway, guys, I really think that this can be a positive thing, but it can also be kind of annoying as well, especially whenever you're trying to meet certain raid comps and, you know, kind of like meet certain fight requirements and you don't have the classes to do so. Now, I think that back in Burning Crusade and Vanilla, class fantasies were very, very well defined. Whenever you played an Affliction Warlock, you knew kind of what you were doing, and whenever you played an Arms Warrior, you knew what you were doing. Fury Warrior, everything like that. Anybody that played the game back then can probably easily know, like, they kind of have an idea in their head of what each class is very good at. You know, Affliction Warlock is dots. You know, Shadow Priest is dots and fears and some heals. Arms Warrior is big, you know, like singular hits, and Fury Warrior is small, you know, like powerful hits over time, and everything else like that. And really, I kind of want to explain to you guys, I guess, like the reason that some of my first alts came to be. And I guess this is kind of like evidence for why I think that class de-homogenization could be a very good thing if done correctly. Now, back in, like, I think it was like the beginning of Burning Crusade, I was not having a very good time on my warrior, and so I think it did a battleground or something like that, and I fought a warlock, and he just killed me without even really targeting me. And so I figured, like, hey man, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. So I went and I made my Warlock, and this is the genesis of Crack Monkey, the Gnome Warlock. And I leveled that Warlock up to 70, and I had the best fucking time of my life. And honestly, it was like I was playing an entirely different game, because like the difference between playing a warrior and playing a warlock was so big, and I was just able to play the game entirely differently. It was just amazing, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I leveled that warlock up, dotting shit up, having such a good fucking time. Oh my god, it was amazing. I have so many screenshots of it. And honestly, like, I had really, really good time doing this, and it was because, you know, I didn't play the class necessarily to get a utility and rating, but I played the class to enjoy and indulge and engage in that class fantasy, in that type of gameplay. And, you know, I think that at the end of Mists of Pandaria, whenever homogenization was at an all-time high, you didn't necessarily have that same feel to, oh, I want to play this class so I can do this thing. It was kind of like you just play basically whatever you want, and you're going to pretty much end up in the same spot. Now, a little bit later on after that, after I leveled up my Warlock, and, you know, they nerfed Warlocks, and so I was just like, fuck that, I don't know how to play them anyway. I was doing Shadow Labyrinth or something like that on my Warrior, and I was tanking, and back then Thunderclap only hit 4 targets, and I was like losing aggro, the mobs were killing the healers, killing the DPS, and I was getting kicked out of the group. So I figured, hey, maybe I should roll a Paladin tank, because back then, this is back in Burning Crusade, Paladin tanks were extremely, extremely powerful for tanking large groups of mobs. And so I leveled that Paladin tank up, same thing as a Warlock, and I had the best fucking time. It was entirely different than playing my Warrior or playing my Warlock, and whenever I got up to 70 or 60 or whatever, I was able to hold aggro on everything. It was fucking great, because Consecrate didn't have a target cap. So each of those different classes, and in doing so also, by the way, in doing so made me understand what paladins are good at, and also made me understand and appreciate what my warrior was good at as well. And so in doing this, it kind of is like a, like both things, like a symbiotic relationship of not only enjoying a new class, but also, engaging in that new class and realizing, what your old class had that this new class doesn't have, and then vice versa and everything. Very, very enjoyable experience. And whenever the class homogenization is at a very, very high level, and, as I said, the main difference is the transmogs, you don't necessarily get that as much. And so I think that dehomogenizing the classes can kind of allow people to really pick up another class and start playing it and really enjoy it and feel like they're playing an entirely different game, and hopefully play that class and play that spec because they saw somebody out of that class or spec having a really good time at it, or doing some sort of a gameplay that they enjoyed and they thought was really cool, and actually then go ahead and engage and pursue that themselves. I think that would be a really, really good thing, and something that in Legion hopefully Blizzard can pursue and make happen. Now, also on top of that, the other thing I want to talk to you guys about is really kind of the result of of losing these spells and abilities. Now, I think that anybody that's played a class for like for me, like 7, 8, I don't even want to think. I don't even know how long I've been playing my warrior, but it's been a very long time, almost a decade. And losing spell reflection, losing intervene. Oh my god, because arms warriors and fury warriors aren't going to have those, at least to the best of my knowledge, in Legion. And so we're going to be losing those abilities, and it hurts. And at a certain level, I wish we could still keep spell reflect, honestly. But besides that, intervene, I can kind of understand it. And, losing those abilities sucks. For a veteran player, to lose, a certain functionality that they've had for the better part of a decade, of course that's going to be upsetting. But Blizzard also should be making decisions for what's going to be best for the game, not necessarily what's going to be best for somebody that's been playing the game for 10 years. I think that a lot of that mentality has led to a lot of decisions that have been kind of unfriendly towards new players, and I think that's been a big, a causal factor in subscriptions dropping and new players not necessarily coming back into the game in the same way that they used to. So what I would really like to see, instead of them adding in a bunch of new core rotational abilities, I'd really like to see new cool flavor abilities that aren't necessarily core rotational abilities that you need on boss fights or anything like that. Warlocks have Eye of Kilrog, I think that Shamans have Farsight, Hunters have Eagle Eye, which is very similar to Farsight, and a lot of different classes have these cool little abilities that they can use that may be useful in very, very small, very specific circumstances, but they don't necessarily game breaking, and you don't need to be using them on cooldown in a raid environment or in PvP. And also at the same time with PvP, I think that what's also really, really cool is whenever certain abilities do function in a certain very specific way in PvP, and it allows for things to kind of have a little bit of a higher skill cap and at least an oh shit moment for the first time it happens. I think the best example for that is if you ever played a Death Knight and you pop Lichborn and then you get shackled because Lichborn turns you into undead, or you get turn undead, or the fear from paladins, turn undead. You get feared by a paladin as a Death Knight, and it's what the fuck is this? And it's again just kind of a skill cap thing, and something just a little bit extra that you can do. It's not necessarily game breaking, but it is a little bit, something that people who, have played the game a long time and really understand their class can take advantage of their abilities to just a little bit of a higher level than everybody else. And if they could add in more things like that kind of allow people to get a higher skill cap on the abilities that they do have, rather than adding in just more abilities, I think that would be more enjoyable, and it would kind of promote more mastery of the classes and everything like that, rather than just adding more and more abilities, if you guys can kind of see what I'm saying. Now, really, is the class homogenization a problem now? It's less of a problem now than it was in Mists of Pandaria, but I do think that it could get a lot better, and it could get back to the same way that it was in Vanilla and Burning Crusade in terms of people enjoying each different specific class and spec, and get back to the way it was in Wrath of the Lich King in a way, with each different class and spec being able to bring something to the table, but not necessarily have that something be so crucial that you were fucked without it, same way as it was in Burning Crusade, right? So really, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I am, cautiously optimistic, and I've said that with so many different things with Legion, and this is no different. I'm very cautiously optimistic with the class homogenization and ability pruning, and I really hope that the abilities that they decide to take away are, what they do have left is still going to be fun and engaging for players, old and new players alike. And I think that's a very, very important thing that Blizzard should be focusing on, or not focusing on. I mean, I don't really know like what their real goals are with WoW now. Are they trying to get new players? Are they trying to just keep old players? I don't know. I have no idea what they're doing. But it seems to me like it would be a good thing to get new players into the game, right? Especially with a 10-year catalog of content, right? So anyway, I think that it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It depends on how it's implemented. And hopefully you guys know that I'll be providing my feedback from the Legion Alpha, the Legion Beta, and even whenever the game comes out with what I think should be staying in the game and what I think should go. But anyway, I'd like to hear what you guys think. And if you like the pruning changes in your class, well, I know nobody's going to say that. But, if you like the idea of dehomogenizing classes, let me know. And if you think that having all the classes the same would be good, let me know about that too. I've never really heard anybody say that before, so I'd be kind of curious if anybody actually really thinks that. But either way, thanks a lot for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.